Set your project directory. Make sure it's set to a folder called SecondaryMorphs. Click OK. Secondary morphs are morph targets that correct or enhance the current targets that you have. If you're doing lip sync and need to combine multiple sliders together, a secondary morph will fix the problems that arise when combining all of those translations. It's more readily seen if you try to do a smile and a sneer at the same time, and then do a mouth open. You can create a secondary morph for all of those, and it'll blend to that instead. Let's go to File. We're going to load a set of objects from the Objects folder that I've exported from Wings. Mouth base is our original model, and the other three are the morph targets. They're symmetrical, and we're going to split out left and right sides that are combinations. So head into Setup, go to the Effects tab, and we'll just select Morph Blender. Make sure mouth base is highlighted and add the effect to that. Under Cluster Create, just select the other clusters, the other objects, and convert them to clusters. Create a slider for those, expand this, and then just add those to the sliders. So we've created just a Morph Blender effect that's explained exactly in the manual. So we have three morph targets that we're going to separate into a left and right side within Messiah. Let's save this setup scene. Let's right click and save scene. And go into the secondary morphs, into the scenes folder, and save that as mouth secondary setup into the scenes folder. There's a neat feature inside Messiah that lets you use meta effectors and procedurals to blend between morph targets. So go back into Setup. We'll go to Tools, and we're going to add a procedural plane. Just move that to the bottom of the list. We'll just Control multi-select all of the morph targets and just parent them onto our mouth base. Let's get the cluster slider out of there. We're going to need access to that. And take a look at our procedural. Go to the Procedurals tab, and we're going to change the type to a plane. I'm going to bank this plane 90 degrees, move it up on Y, over on X, and switch to a right view, and expand this plane's X and Z radius until it fits the whole face. Let's go to the front, and we'll position this on X right next to the cheek. You can Control select that with mouth base. If we expand the window, go to the weight list, and we can turn it into weight drawing. By default, procedurals don't have a weight value assigned to them. We need to change the type to linear. You can see that it fades off on linear. We can even boost the strength a bit so that we just get a neat fall off from here. Now the interesting thing about procedurals when you're doing it on linear is that once it's done doing its linear calculation, the red spots that show up are actually a negative value. So you could get some secondary motion for free inside your morph target. So we'll just set this so we get very little negative value, and this is positioned in the middle of the cheek. I'm going to call this procedural right side. Our right, not the character's right. Select right side, the / key on the keypad to mirror that across. Call this one left side. If you need to see left side's weight list, make sure it's selected and then just check on the list there and it'll show you the left side. Should be exactly the same. So we go back into our items. Let's close down new items and select our cluster slider. There's a neat feature back here called weight that will let you use these procedural fall-off values to blend the weight back to the original character. If we head into animate, we want the sneer and the pullback to blend on left and right side. So go back into setup, Let's change the mouth back to smooth. And take a look at these. These have no weights on them. We're going to add several new targets. We're going to add a top snare and a pullback for the right side. So we go to weight. We'll select right side for both of these. So we head into animate. You can pull these down. And we'll start with top snare, which blends up and fades off, and pull back, which eliminates half of our work. Select mouth base, go to File. We're going to save this object as a wavefront object. We're just going to call this one top right snare. Head back into Setup. Load the cluster slider again. Let's select left side for these two blank ones, and we'll select top snare and pull back. So we head back into animate. We can move those down, and you see that pullback is hidden, so right click on it to add that, and this shows up in top snare. So now we have a left side. So select the mouth base, right click, save object as a wavefront object. We're going to call this one top left snare. Go back into Setup. Let's do the same thing for the bottom. But we don't have to add more sliders because these are all going back into another morph target when we rebuild the scene. So instead of top snare, let's just set both of these top snares to bottom snares. Head back into animate. We already have a bottom snare going on. Select mouth base. We'll save object as a wavefront object, bottom left snare. Go back to cluster slider. Let's hide those, and we'll snare the right side. Highlight mouth base object. We'll save that object file out as a wavefront object as bottom right snare. So we have a set of secondary morphs that we've created, and now you can open them up in the modeler and add any other corrections to them or tweak them around for wrinkles or anything else. Let's right click and let's save this scene over itself. And let's create a new scene. Let's go to File. We're going to load all of these back on again. We're going to select mouth base. We'll just move that to the top of the list. Go to Setup, Effects, add Morph Blender to mouth base, and we'll convert all of these clusters to sit on the slider. Let's create a new slider for them. Let's expand the window, and we'll mimic the top counterclockwise. So we'll start with top snare, top right, pull back, bottom right, bottom, bottom left, pull back, top left. So we have 8 values going on. Let's right click and show those other 2 values. Since we're in setup, we can set their values to 0, though it's not really going to matter. And we just happen to have several values that match up to our box controller. So let's select all of these. We'll parent that to mouth base. Take cluster slider out for now. And while we're in setup, tap F5 to bring up the palette. We're in the Setups tab on the palette. Double click on box controller to build it. See, it shows up right in the middle here. And since we had mouth base selected, it built it in there. So I'll just drag that outside. We can delete this controller slider, since we have one right here that we can add to box controller. Go into Commands tab. We have all of these commands already set up, so we'll start with top %. We'll start with top snare. Channels, check to make current selection active and add that. Go to top right, pull back, bottom right, bottom, bottom left, pull back, and top left. Head back into Animate. We can untack that. So highlight our joystick and move it around. We have our box controllers. Now you notice they both pull back on the left and right. Well, since these are external models now, we can go back in, open up our previous setup, export a left and a right, and this will read in. We just have to swap out. We just have to add another cluster to the mouth base. Click on File. We're going to save this scene as Mouth Secondary Setup 2.